What's up? This is EJ Stewart.
What if I drop 40 days, 40 nights?
One, you can't do it.
All you are your words. If there's anything you learned about me, I'm gonna keep it 100 with you.
Every morning, every night, for 40 days.
Going to be a long 40 days this year.
My skill shot will hold for your city for 40 days, 40 nights.
Rest in peace to all my ops.
For 40 days. If I can do that, then everything will be okay.
You're the guy who can't finish a sandwich. You think you can go 40 days? This isn't normal!
Oh, you're wrong, brother. I'm gonna go the distance.
Let's go! Let's go is right. What's up? This is EJ Stewart. You are watching 40 Days, 40 Nights. We are on night number 16. We're doing this show, and I believe there is audio. Apologies to people who maybe watched earlier in the morning stream where we had a little audio technical glitch. A glitch that maybe is still kind of affecting us a little bit. I saw the music cut out a little bit there, and we played it back. But nonetheless, we are audioed up, ready to go, ready to rock. Really excited about this show. Obviously, we're in the middle of Super Bowl week. It's been a little bit of a slow NFL day, to be honest. I don't got much NFL for you. We'll be talking plenty of NFL throughout the course of the day. Spoiler alert, or not a spoiler, a little bit of peel the curtain back behind the show. I actually was trying to reach out to some folks, see if I can get some fun guests for tonight. Did not anticipate that the guests I had planned would be out at Super Bowl week. But there's some folks who I'm really excited about who will be on the show. They'll be on the show probably next week to kind of recap what's been going on with the result of the Super Bowl, of course. So that's going to be a ton of fun when that happens. As of right now, they're MIA in terms of this week. Every time, hey, man, you want to come on the show tonight, talk some Super Bowl? They're like, I'm at the Super Bowl. I'm like, oh, right, of course. You're a seasoned professional and a veteran in this game. Of course, why would you not be at the Super Bowl? So, but they've already agreed to come on next week, so that'll be a lot of fun. And we'll have other NFL guests who are not at Super Bowl week who will be able to come on and talk some NFL stuff. So I'm really excited about that. That's going to be a ton of fun. But this show is going to be great as well because we're going to have a lot of different things to get to. There's new details in the Giannis Antetokounmpo trade sweepstakes as we get closer and closer to that Thursday deadline. And I'm starting to feel a certain way about it. You know, I know I'm kind of wavering back and forth. I felt this was one of those things where it could have gone either way. I feel like it's going one way. And I'll tell you about that a little bit later in the show. We're also going to talk about staying in the NBA. Jason Kidd took a pretty big fine for some comments he made over the week after a Mavs loss. Some of those comments directed directly at the media in response to a question about his coaching ability and how he has developed young Cooper Flag. So you'll hear that sound from him a little bit later. He was fired up. And he also criticized the refs earlier in that press conference as well, which really led to the big fine. But the NBA also noted the profane comments that he made also to the media as to why he was also fined. So we'll get down to that. We didn't talk Royal Rumble at all. We're about like a little less than 2 hours away from Raw, where we're fully on the road to WrestleMania. There were Royal Rumble results. We'll get to those a little bit later because I definitely want to give my thoughts on what I thought about the show and the decisions to go with Liv Morgan and Roman Reigns as this year's Royal Rumble. I mean, both will have title matches. I did note that during the Reigns match, they said, you know, the person that will headline WrestleMania. So it seems like it's a lock that Roman Reigns is going to headline one of the nights of WrestleMania, which is not shocking. He is headlined, I don't know at this point how many years in a row, maybe 7 or 8 years in a row. I mean, he headlined back when I was at the one in New Orleans for WrestleMania, not 30, the one after that, the one that was kind of not that great. I want to say that was probably 33, 34 maybe. Like, I don't think he's missed a headliner since. So it's not a surprise that he's headlining, but I did note that when I was listening to the show, watching the show, being like, oh, for the other matches, said, they win the championship for the champion they're choosing. I didn't hear headline WrestleMania. When the men's match came on, they said headline WrestleMania, and of course Roman Reigns won. So interesting in terms of where the story is going. It feels like the WrestleMania picture is still very unsettled. Definitely on the men's side for sure. So I definitely want to break that down. We'll also talk about someone else, agreeing with your boy, that there is maybe some suspicion regarding why Kawhi Leonard was not put on the All-Star team. And they're leading right to that Pablo Torre investigation that happened with Aspiration and that no-show job that he got that some believe was a way for the Clippers to circumvent the cap to get Kawhi Leonard some more money. There's a major MLB trade that is coming down the pipe and looks like it's close to being completed. And then another big news we have from today, or from the weekend, big boxing result. Shakur Stevenson wins the WBL junior welterweight championship over Teofimo Lopez, and we'll talk about his performance and kind of what that means for the landscape of boxing. And then I mentioned earlier, there was a thing that happened over the course of the weekend in boxing that I had never seen before, and I thought I had seen it all in sports. We've seen some absurdities of epic proportions in sports. We've seen a riot happen during the middle of an NBA game. We've seen, of course, fans get on the court for various different reasons. We saw a band on the field in college football. Like, we've seen just about everything. We've seen live mascots get off their leashes and run around the field. We saw Marshawn Lynch driving an injury cart during a game, or not during a game, I think it was pre-game, but during the game all over the court, all over the field at Cal. I mean, we've seen it all. But then we haven't. I say we've seen it all, but then I watched what I saw over the course of the weekend, and I said, that's something that I've never seen before. That's not something I expected to see before, and that is insane that just happened. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. So this will be a good one. We got a jam-packed show. This will be a lot of fun. Again, this is EJ Stewart's 40 days, 40 nights. So much to get to. We got plenty of time tonight. We're not in no super rush, but we're going to get to it all. Of course, again, if you're watching on YouTube, we are streaming live. So if you're watching us on YouTube, shout out to the folks on YouTube. New Generation Media is where you can subscribe to the channel. Be sure to like, be sure to comment, be sure to engage in any way you can to the show. We greatly appreciate that. Also, of course, streaming live on X, EJ_Stewart. Again, like the video, comment. Again, I learned that I can read comments via X, which is really cool. So really excited about that. We're on X right now. So if you want to watch, head over to EJ_Stewart on X. If you want to watch me on X. And we're streaming live on Instagram. Instagram Live. Just follow me, Action EJ on X, and that's where you'll. Excuse me, on Instagram. And that's where you'll find me there. So New Generation Media, we're streaming live. Of course, Action EJ on Instagram and EJ_Stewart on X. And like I mentioned, every show gets podcasted. So if you're not able to watch live, but you want to check me out later, or you're only going to be able to watch a piece of this episode, and you may be on the go, maybe you're working out, maybe you're traveling, whatever the case may be, you can't watch, you can always go to our audio podcast channel, New Generation Podcast Network, to find all episodes of 40 Days and 40 Nights, plus all other shows we have in store for this entire slate. We have New Generation Media, Hero Talk, Imperial Broadcast, all of our good shows, all on the New Generation Podcast Network. That's where you'll find 40 Days and 40 Nights, plus all the other podcasts that we do around here. All right, let's get it going, man. Let's talk about the latest in the Giannis Antetokounmpo sweepstakes, and it begins with some interesting and important details about what may be going on with the Minnesota Timberwolves, who apparently have been ramping up their efforts to acquire Giannis Antetokounmpo, and that has included bringing in multiple teams into the fray, because as you know, this is a massive situation with Giannis Antetokounmpo being one of the greatest players in the history of the NBA, being available in what is maybe not his the beginning of his prime, maybe the end of his prime, and nonetheless he's still a highly productive player. So it makes sense that plenty of NFL teams, NBA teams, would be interested in bringing in Giannis. So I want you to hear from Brian Windhorst himself, because he spoke a lot about this. So let's go to the aggressive side, which is apparently the T-Wolves. He mentions how the T-Wolves are very much involved with Giannis Antetokounmpo at this point in time. Actually, I don't know if that played. They might have played. I didn't hear it, but let me. I don't have my thing on. So let me play it one more time in case you did not hear. This was Brian Windhorst on the T-Wolves.
When Sham says an aggressive team, he's talking about the Wolves, because they're out there recruiting third and fourth teams to try to improve their offer to see if they can get Giannis. If they don't, which I think it's a long shot, you could see them looking at making a backup deal with a guard.
So apologies, that played twice. In my headphones, it didn't play. It was a little setting I was off there. But so that's him saying, listen, like, Shams today reiterated that the aggressive suitors for the Giannis Antetokounmpo sweepstakes are the Heat, the Knicks, the Warriors, and the T-Wolves. Brian Windhorst is kind of bringing in his own flair and flavor to the discussion and saying when you talk about the truly aggressive team, the team to talk about are the T-Wolves because they are the one that are bringing in other teams into the party to try to potentially make this a multi-team trade to make it happen. And I feel like for the T-Wolves, really for almost all these teams, but definitely the T-Wolves and the Knicks, they are the two teams we look at and say they absolutely have to bring in someone else. Could you make a case the Warriors can make a trade on their own, and we'll talk about them in a second? Yes, you can, because they have all their draft picks. I'm not sure how enticing the players they have are, but they do have all their draft picks. So it's not like I think they need to shop some other team around, some of these guys around in order to get other competition. In theory, if they want to make it 5 first-round picks, they want to try to see if they can get a first-rounder for Kuminga. No one's offered one yet. Otherwise, he would have been long gone. But that maybe is the case. But otherwise, I think there's a possibility that they could just simply say, hey, here's Jimmy, here's Kuminga. We'll take some crap from you with Giannis. And here's 4 first-round picks. Let's make it happen. And it seems like that is on the table. And according to Brett Siegel of Clutch Points, it seems like that is something that they are indeed considering. But at this point in time, as not been accepted yet, obviously, and the T-Wolves are the teams that don't have the draft capital that the Bucks would want, and also don't really have probably the young prospect that the Bucks want. They are the team that is trying to get creative and trying to make this happen. And of course, Windhorst says that, hey, if it doesn't happen, it is a long shot because it's always tough when you start bringing in multiple teams, multiple salaries, multiple situations now, given how tough the trade landscape is due to the CBA and due to teams trying like heck to avoid the second apron. It can be tricky to make these kind of deals, especially during the season, which is why I go to my original point, especially given the other part of that headline you see right below me, which is Knicks not being aggressive to reach deal, why I am starting to believe that a trade will not happen. You got to respect the T-Wolves. I think if you look at the T-Wolves situation, they're in a Western Conference where it feels like could they just wait their turn and maybe this thing will turn around and eventually it'll come to them and they'll have an opportunity to get to the NBA Finals and win a title. They've been knocking on the door now for a couple of years. Yeah, they could. It's not without in the realm of possibility that they can't find a way to get out of this West. Again, the NBA is very fluid. You don't wish for injuries, but injuries certainly can happen and that could change life for certain teams. Teams get older. Teams have to break up unexpectedly. You never know why an opportunity may present itself for any NBA team. So that stands with the Minnesota Timberwolves, who, as Jerry Jones famously said, talking about the Cowboys, are right around the rim. They're right now 5th in the Western Conference. They've made the Western Conference Finals now 2 years in a row. The Western Conference is a bear. They don't look to me, and they played in the playoffs last year, so we got a good look at it. They don't look anywhere close to the Thunder, in my opinion. But again, you never know what happens with injury. You never know what happens with anything. You never know just with more experience playing against that team and understanding what it takes to beat that team, that they, up their game. Again, everything is open in terms of what the T-Wolves can do. But it feels like there's a canyon between the Thunder and the T-Wolves. The other teams, in a 7-game series, could they beat the Spurs? Sure. Would I pick them? No, but they could. Could they beat the Thunder? I mean, the Nuggets? They have before already. They did 2 years ago. That was with Cat, obviously, but they have beat the Nuggets, and they were the defending champ at that time. Could they beat the Rockets in a first-round matchup, which is right now would be the 4-5 matchup, or in a second-round matchup in the future? Yeah, I don't think that's insane. I think that again, they're right there. They're among these teams, but I do think that it would make sense for them to look at their roster and say, at this point in time, Ant-Man's his prime is, he might not even reach his prime yet. That's how great a player he is, and that's how young he is. Are we in a position where it may make sense for us to break up some of what is truly some pretty solid depth for the T-Wolves to bring in a megastar like Giannis and say, what can we do if we pair up Anthony Edwards with Giannis and give it a go? Now, I would tell them the returns on that may not be as fruitful as you think, because this is no longer the super team era where it's let's team up 2 superstars and put them around a bunch of crap and see if we can win a championship. The Heat, of course, successfully did that, though it took them a year to figure that out. Like, they failed in the first year because there was really, truly nothing around LeBron, Wade, and Bosh. And then they next year, another year where they have their own mid-level exception, they can bring in other pieces. they were able to put together a slightly better team around those guys. And LeBron, of course, really came into his own in that second year, and they were able to win a title. But we're kind of well past the super team era. We now know that super teams don't really work. We saw it with the Suns. We saw it with the Nets. Like, you can't sacrifice your depth in order to bring in megastars and expect that a title is just inevitable. It isn't. It's extremely hard to do. In fact, every year we goes by, it tells you just how much of a great job it was by the Heat and by Pat Riley and by Spoelstra and by those guys, Wade, Bosh, and Braun, to win those titles, because now we've seen multiple teams try to go to that same well, and they've belly flopped completely. So I don't look at the situation and see, oh, they get Giannis, they're automatically the team to beat in the West. Because I would assume any trade that involves multiple teams, and then, of course, obviously, you're acquiring Giannis, I would assume you're losing Randall and Jaden McDaniels off rip. Because of his salary, there's a chance you also may lose Gobert, though I think that they may be able to hold on to him of all the pieces. And so those two guys you're probably losing. I think you're probably losing someone like Dante DiVincenzo as well. Like, that's three good players for them. Those are three of their starters, right? That's a lot to give up. And the T-Wolves are a good team. I don't look at them as a team that, you know, has the kind of depth where they could lose three starters and then be fine, even if they're acquiring someone like Giannis Antetokounmpo. Also, in terms of a basketball fit, I really don't know how Anthony Edwards and Giannis fit together. I mean, Anthony Edwards is kind of an isolation scorer. Giannis is many things. He can be an isolation scorer. He can obviously be a finisher in an offense as well. But he's not a floor spacer. And what we've seen in the past for the T-Wolves is in the playoffs, when you've been able to pack the paint a little bit on Ant-Man and show him bodies, it's been a lot easier to guard him. It's a little harder to do that with Giannis, but because he's not a floor spacer, where you put him on the floor to relieve pressure off Edwards, I don't know if he really does. He relieves pressure just in the sense that he can average his own 30 points. He can do his own thing. That will relieve a lot of pressure. And it actually, you know, flip side, when Giannis has the ball, it may open things up more for Edwards if he's willing to be able to be a spot-up shooter, because he is a very good shooter. One of the more underrated parts of his game. If he's willing to be ready to be a spot-up shooter and get those looks, he can get different looks that he wouldn't get typically playing with the guys that he has. Essentially, think of what Julius Randle brings to the table, but times that by 3 or 4. That's essentially Giannis's impact. So we've seen him and Randle have some success, but not championship success. I'd be curious to see if a team that is really, you know, Edwards, Giannis, and Gobert as your core, like, is that enough to win a title with now maybe some of these younger guys having to come into the fray? Naz Reid will probably get a lot more minutes in that situation, assuming he doesn't get traded. But, you know, is Mike Conley, who's only averaging 4 points a game this year, like, how much of an impact player can he still be? Jaden Clark, is he going to be able to step up? Like, there are going to be some guys, you know, Bones Highlands played 41 games for them this year. These are guys that have been bit players, really. This is a team that has relied heavily on their starting lineup to really provide a lot of the offense. If you're losing 2 or 3 guys in that lineup, you know, it's basically the 5 and then Naz Reid. Losing some of those guys, where are you getting the rest of your offense from? So, from a T-Wolves standpoint, I get it. It's rare that he'll get a superstar like Giannis. I'd be very curious if Giannis would sign an extension there. My guess would be no, but I don't know. A lot of these guys seem to really love the idea of securing the bag regardless of what the situation is. He's lived in Milwaukee. I assumed if he was going to move to a different team, he would prefer to move either further to the coast to a big market, which is why we've heard Miami or the Knicks, or to a warm weather place somewhere else that's not Milwaukee. That's what I would have assumed. Minnesota is none of those things. Minnesota is pretty close to Milwaukee, actually, and he's going to another cold weather place, another small market. So I don't. If that's what he's looking for, I don't know if that's what would be interesting for him. But he is apparently interested in playing with Ant-Man. I wonder, though, if he goes there and gets traded and says, I'll come here, but I'm not signing. And then he'll allow himself to kind of get to maybe a year or 2 years removed to free agency, and then he'll say, okay, now I went out again because this hasn't worked out. Or now I'll just go to free agency, though we know free agency has been kind of a sham for many years now. I wonder how that would play out. That would be interesting to me if I was looking at the Giannis situation. Ant-Man and Giannis, I think, would be a great story for the NBA if you're going off the macro level, which I don't really love. I just love talking ball for the most part. But if you're talking from a story point standpoint, putting one of the most marketable guys in the NBA and putting them next to one of the greatest stars in the NBA and really creating a true like, again, I question the basketball fit, but you'd at least have to think about, is this the kind of team that maybe would give the Thunder enough trouble because of just how do you put so much attention on Ant-Man and also Giannis Antetokounmpo? It would be, I'd love to see it from a basketball standpoint. They're a lot more interesting than they were with this team they have currently. That is good. That will continue to be a tough team to beat in the West because they do defend well, and Ant-Man has become a really good playoff player, but I don't think is realistic when it comes to them winning a championship. So on the flip side, that was the T-Wolves situation. Ramping up for Giannis. Windhorst course is a long shot, but if we're talking about teams that are being aggressive, he says that's the team to look at in terms of the moves they made. The Knicks apparently are not one of the teams to look at when it comes to being aggressive. Now, I'll say again, when Shams put out his report today, because he kind of put up an updated report that didn't really say much new, but he continues to mention those 4 teams that I mentioned earlier as the aggressive suitors. Knicks, Heat, T-Wolves, Warriors. Windhorst says the Knicks actually ain't being that aggressive. The earlier sound you heard from Windhorst was on NBA Today. This sound is from ESPN's Get Up. Sorry, this I think also is not playing. Hold on one second. I've had this issue with this thing. It might, again, if it was playing, apologies. I'm gonna play one more time just so I can hear what the hell Brian Windhorst is saying.
The Knicks believe in this team, Greeny, and that could end up being, an excellent assessment, or that could end up being a mistake. But they believed in this team last summer when Giannis was sort of loosely available in those discussions. They didn't make an aggressive offer at that time to progress those talks. If they want to win a bidding war for Giannis now, I think it's going to take a 3 or 4 team trade where they take some of their players, go out and get other assets for them, and then come back to the Bucks and make very strong offers. That is just not happening. They are not showing that aggression to get Giannis right now.
That's interesting to me. I say this with all due respect to Windhorst. I don't think this is a diss to him, but I know some reporters, they take pride in their reporting and they don't like being told I'm a mouthpiece for anybody or anything like that. I don't mean this facetiously or in any kind of disrespectful way at all. That does sound to me like the Bucks aren't getting the kind of offers they want from the Knicks, and they're telling Windhorst. Windhorst is doing his job. I'm not saying he's being a mouthpiece for anybody. He's just reporting what he's being told. But I think it does scream to me, Bucks are like, Knicks ain't as into this thing as we hoped and thought they would be, which is, whether they want to trade him there or not, just good for the nature of the negotiation if the Knicks are indeed a heavy, aggressive team trying to get him. Let's tell Brian Windhorst, hey, the Knicks really aren't in this thing. Maybe that kind of drums up attention for the rest of the league to maybe say, oh, maybe we can get in there. The Knicks aren't going to get in there. And also maybe get the Knicks' attention, who maybe the Knicks are like, hey, we think the market's not that great. We're not all that into this. Let's pull back and let's see what really happens here. And the T-Wolves, of course, want to get as much for Giannis as possible. And they also know Giannis really wants to go there. And there could be also back channel conversations where maybe they're realizing that when it gets to putting this deal across the finish line, getting Giannis to any other team besides the Knicks may come with complications, like he may not want to sign an extension, like he may say he doesn't want to play there, that they don't want to deal with. Where they know the Knicks, they know he will go there. I think the Knicks will probably sign him to an extension, and he definitely will sign there. So there are a lot of reasons why I feel like this kind of reporting could be coming out, especially considering Shams is putting out there that it's all 4 teams that are still being super aggressive for him. But then you got Windhorst saying there's one team that is not, and that is the New York Knicks. And then the one team that is the team that has the least amount of appeal when it comes to market, when it comes to excitement, when it comes to warm weather in Minnesota. I find that very interesting. So him essentially saying Knicks weren't all that aggressive during the summer, which I also find interesting because we've had all this deal with Carly Towns being so upset. And like Windhorst is like, they like this team, and that's why they didn't make a trade during the offseason. Yet Cat was still upset about the fact that he was dangled in trade rumors. And then here's Windhorst now again saying that, a big reason why is because the Knicks see an opportunity when it comes to their ability to potentially still get out of the East despite some rocky weather during the month of January.
I think that's because they like this team. They don't think the Eastern Conference is a giant mountain to climb. And while this team has flaws, the entire East is limited in some capacity. And so, look, if Giannis doesn't get traded and the Knicks don't win the East this year, this could be revisited. But the Knicks, with their words and actions, what Jim Dolan recently said in an interview that he believes in this team, I don't think we're headed in that direction right now.
That recent interview, by the way, was on WFAN, which is where I host. I'll be back on there Sunday morning, 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. Give respect to the Craig Carton Show, hosted by Craig Carton and Chris McMonagle. But I don't feel like a trade is happening at all. That's the feeling I get. The fact that the T-Wolves are the team that it seems to be showing the most aggression in terms of getting what the Bucks want. I think we're trending towards this trade not happening during the trade deadline, him remaining a Milwaukee Buck, simply because it just makes more sense for them to wait till the offseason to make a move. And like Windhorst said there, they like this team. They did struggle to start the month of January, and that's maybe an understatement. They were playing among some of the worst basketball in the entire NBA, but they've now won 6 straight, and they've kind of flipped the script from what was a miserable beginning of January to ending the month strong, and they've started the month strong with a pretty high-profile win over the Lakers on Sunday Night Basketball last night in a game where the Lakers didn't have Austin Reeves. They didn't have Deuce McBride. Reeves is better, of course. I don't want to sound like, they had KD, we got J.D. McDaniels. But nonetheless, they were missing a guy. The Lakers were obviously missing one of their stars. But the Knicks did win. They won pretty convincingly at home, and they've, again, seemed to flip the script and turn it around when it comes to one of their biggest issues, which was team defense. They were playing some of the worst defense in the NBA. They finished, I believe they were 30th, maybe even worse during that 2-9 stretch they started the month with when it came to defensive rating. So that has totally flipped. They have actually been one of the best defensive teams over the last 3 weeks. So I think the Knicks look at how they're playing now, and they're like, a couple weeks ago, I think maybe they were like, hey, we might have to do something drastic. I think now they're saying, maybe we hold on to the horses. Like, the Eastern Conference is still kind of what we expected it to be. It's a conference that is not that deep. It's a conference that doesn't really have usually the big star power that it's had in recent years with Tyrese Haliburton and Jason Tatum being out. Again, we're hearing now Tatum reassessing whether or not he wants to return. The Knicks, despite that 2-9 stretch, because they started the year so strong, because the East hasn't had a bunch of world beaters in it, they're still the number 2 seed in the East right now. And they're still only 5.5 out behind Detroit. I mean, that's going to be a climb. I'm not going to sit here and say they can definitely catch Detroit for that number 1 seed, but it's definitely not out of the question for them to, especially if they have indeed turned the corner. And the Knicks we're seeing in this current stretch is going to be more of who we see towards the rest of the season. The Pistons can't go on a 3-10 stretch at a certain point and think that they're going to be able to easily keep that number 1 seed from the Knicks, by the way, or the Celtics, who are continuing to play good ball despite not having Jason Tatum this year. So I think the Knicks are looking at it and saying, the team has shown us enough. The price that they're asking for is going to require us to do a lot of gymnastics that we don't want to do. And they maybe attempted. Like, I think the Jrue Holiday stuff was real. I don't think it was an accident that Ian Bailey was putting that out there. I think the Knicks probably said, okay, he's out there. Okay, you want to play with Jrue Holiday? There is some scenario where we would be willing to make a trade that would mean essentially Cat goes probably, Mikal Bridges goes, and we return Giannis and Jrue Holiday. What I assume probably happened was one of those teams, like the Portland Trailblazers could have said, F out of here. They could have said, we don't, like, I know we like Bridges. We don't like him that much for what you're giving up or what we have to give up to get him. And that could be a reason why that didn't work. It could be the Knicks, said, okay, we got these amount of first-round picks and this for Giannis. What do you say? And then Buck said, F out of here. Maybe it wasn't enough. But I think the Knicks realized, and I think they probably determined they just weren't going to push it. They just don't have the flexibility to do the things that we needed probably to get this deal done. So, and if they will, like Windhorst said at the end, they could maybe after the season, if they don't win a championship or they don't get to the NBA Finals and they fall short of their goals, then in the offseason they'll have more picks available to them then maybe they revisit it and say, hey, maybe we should change this up because it didn't work. I think they want to see this thing through. And I mentioned something a couple of weeks ago, towards the beginning of 40 Days of 40 Days, when Knicks were really struggling. This might have been after the Martin Luther King Day game. I said, this team is about to show how much they want to stay together. Because to me, if they continue to struggle the way they were going to struggle, I think the Knicks would have been in more position to be super aggressive to do whatever it took maybe to get Giannis Antetokounmpo. And I said on the show, we're about to see how much these guys like playing with each other. And we're about to see how much these guys like being Knicks. Because if they continue to play this way, A, Giannis trade maybe becomes more on the table. But then B, what I've been saying was you may just want to pare down these pieces and just try to get some different guys in here. Forget about Giannis. I've been saying for weeks, and I was saying yesterday on the Fan when I was on WFAN, that I would openly consider still seeing if I could get, a one of those trades that's a sum of the parts is better than an individual piece, and maybe looking at Karl-Anthony Towns and saying, is there another center and some guards that we could put together in a package that comes back for someone like Cat, if it's available, if he's going to continue to be moping and complain, then it might make sense to consider moving on from him. I think where the Knicks are, because of how well they've played of late and how they really have looked, once again, like one of those teams that should be the absolute favorite in the Eastern Conference, I think now they're pulling back and saying there's no need for us to be desperate. There's no need for us to do something insane. We know what our weaknesses are. We know where we can help this team. Let's go out there and make a move. Maybe it's for a backup guard. Maybe it's for another wing. And let's see if we can make a run at this thing. I mean, I saw just kind of ancillary to any of this because it has nothing to do with Giannis per se. But I know that apparently the Bulls have been trying to shop Kobe White. They haven't been all that happy with the fact that no one's offering first-round picks for Kobe White. I don't know why they would think they can get a first-rounder for a guy who's a free agent this year and who's making very little money. He's making $12 million, so he's about to get paid probably in a pretty substantial way. I'm not saying he's going to make $30 million a year, but he's probably definitely going to get a nice pay bump. I assume he'd be making between $20 and $25 million a year. I look at a guy like Kobe White as a rental, and I know he's not the defender that maybe the Knicks want coming off the bench, but he definitely could run the team coming off the bench, and he definitely could score. And I think the team desperately could look for a guy. They want to put a guy next to Jalen Brunson the way we've seen Tyler Kolek have success at times, and he had success on Sunday playing next to Brunson in certain spots. I would be curious if maybe someone like Kobe White, young bull Colin Sexton, we've mentioned a ton of Jose Alvarado. If a trade like that happens, again, a trade for a wing, but I think the team's going to say, you know what, we're going to go all in with these guys, which is why I've been saying that's going to happen. You see Karl-Anthony Towns' offensive struggles. What harm is it to get in front of a microphone and show Karl-Anthony Towns some love and say, hey, listen, we're not making a trade. We love this guy. He's important to this team, and if we're going to win a title, we need him playing at a high level. So if he's disgruntled, if he's upset, why not show him some love and put out there so he can put him at ease that he is not going to be traded? Because it doesn't seem like he's going to be. I don't think the Knicks are going to make those kind of moves where they're going to pare down the pieces to get something that maybe isn't necessarily as good as Karl-Anthony Towns, but maybe if you get multiple pieces that help this team, the sum of the parts will be better than the one asset. I don't think that's what happened. No, that's what I would do. Or at least considering I would see what's out there. You can't make a trade that isn't available to you. But I would definitely consider it. I would definitely look into it if I was the Knicks. And if the right guys were available, I would pull the trigger. I don't think they're going to do that. So, with the situation with Giannis, T-Wolves are ramping up efforts, but even in that clip, Windhorst says it's a long shot, Knicks not being all that aggressive, I feel like, to me, it feels like it's going to be a Warriors or bust deal to me. That's the feeling I get, unless they really love Tyler Hero. Which they might, he's a Milwaukee guy, but I feel like I could see them saying, man, the Warriors are about to hit the iceberg. I mean, they're already kind of hanging on for dear life. They're right now 8th in the Western Conference. They're 7-23. And yes, Giannis is still a great player. But you look at their team, and you look at where they're at right now, with Steph at his age, Draymond at his age, you just get and then the rest of the roster is just kind of meh. You just get the feeling that the Warriors are about to enter some lean years, and they've been holding on for dear life to avoid those lean years. And this would be another kind of stimulus boost that allows them to avoid that for maybe a couple more years. But it still feels like that's coming. It still feels like that iceberg's going to hit at some point. And I would expect the Warriors to become, if Giannis is there, it makes it weird. But I think those draft picks become very valuable. Of these teams they're talking to, Knicks, Heat, and T-Wolves. For the team you look at and say which team it is most likely their picks will be most valuable, I would say the Warriors. Because the Knicks, let's say Brunson finishes his career, he's still a leader, he's still a good player, it's still New York City. They could hit the iceberg. We've seen the Knicks, they were stuck on an iceberg for 20 years, so I get it. I tend to think that they'll probably, even if they don't win a title or whatever the next 2.0 version of the Knicks are, I think they'll still be respectable. The Heat never seem to tank. And then the T-Wolves have Anthony Edwards. So even if he goes there, it flops, it doesn't work out. If they somehow are able to get first-round picks, it seems like Ant-Man, unless Ant-Man leaves, which he then says, I want to be traded or whatever, which is possible. If you're banking on that, then sure. I have no reason or there's no evidence to say that that's going to happen at any point in time. The Warriors have a superstar who's 38 years old. So you look at them and say, okay, it feels like once Steph goes, retires, or it's not as good anymore, and they have to figure out what the next version of the Warriors are, that is going to require probably a full teardown and rebuild, which when those first-round picks become very, very enticing. So if he goes to the Warriors, that creates a whole different conversation about the Western Conference. I think at this point in time, it's Warriors or nothing. If he doesn't go to the Warriors, which to me I would be interesting, only because it's like the Warriors really are giving up all their first round picks. I know like Kuminga's not the greatest, and Jimmy Butler's on a torn Achilles, but considering he's on a 1-year deal essentially, or you have a team option, or whatever his deal was, like I think it's 2 years, but like I just take the money and just eat it, and then just have $50 million come off your cap in a situation where you're entering a CBA where there's going to be new salary cap rules. Seems to make a lot of sense to me to move on to just get Jimmy Butler, who's also, I think, from Wisconsin. He might be from Milwaukee, actually. He played at Marquette, so you're getting another Milwaukee guy. Maybe it may make sense for him to end his career there. Maybe he's your draw for that arena that I know they've paid a bunch of money for, and they're still wanting to get people to come out to the arena for. That would make the most sense to me from where things stand today. But who's to say there isn't some other team that jumps into the fray that we're not hearing about? Who's to say that the Knicks don't change course and decide to become aggressive? But I think if you ask me right now where this goes, I don't think that he gets traded. Let's keep it moving, man. Again, we're less than 2 hours, almost a little about an hour away from the WWE Raw, which of course is on Netflix. I do want to get to, because we didn't get to this morning, the results of the Royal Rumble. So we have 2 Royal Rumble winners. On the women's side, Liv Morgan, towards the end, eliminated Sol Roca and a returning Tiffany Stratton to win the Women's Royal Rumble. Roman Reigns eliminated Gunther, who also retired AJ Styles earlier in the night, and we'll talk about that as well, to win the Men's Royal Rumble. So those are your 2 Royal Rumble winners. They will have championship matches when it comes to WrestleMania. We are officially on the road to WrestleMania. Triple H says that today marks the beginning of a new era for WWE. I don't quite know what that means, to be honest. He has said a lot of things when it comes to this is the biggest thing ever and can't wait till this happens, and oh, look at this, and then nothing happens. He said that there was going to be a bunch of surprises during this past WrestleMania, a Royal Rumble that we had just this weekend. I mean, is Mr. Iguana Royce Keys, who made his debut for formerly Powerhouse Hobbs, good one, okay. I don't know if this was like the biggest surprises that we've seen ever. There were some surprises. The women's match, I don't think had quite as many. You did get Brie Bella coming back, which was pretty neat. I thought a pretty good moment. There were some cool ones, but there were some people that were conspicuously absent from the Royal Rumble. So I think from that standpoint, maybe a little bit of a disappointment to say there's going to be all these surprises. And the surprises we got were probably Keys being the biggest one. I think it was a good moment, but not the hugest thing it came to the surprises here. I want to talk about Reigns for a second, because this was sound that I told Kendall when Kendall was on Friday. I went to play, but I didn't play. I will play for you now. This was from Pat McAfee show. This is leading up to the Royal Rumble match. This was actually, I think, on Friday. I think he said this earlier in that day. And Roman Reigns had some choice words for WWE and where things stand. I want you to hear from him, because he says that WWE, he's really looked at the young roster, and he feels like his absence allowed them an opportunity to step up to the plate, and they really haven't. Let's hear from the tribal chief. I want to make sure this is playing. Make sure I do all the things we needed to do. Here's the tribal chief.
And the way I look at it is, I'm a generous tribal chief. I give the people plenty of time. These young talent, they say we hog all the TV time. You know what I mean? They'll complain about one thing, and then I leave an opening. I give them plenty of space to create, whatever type of superstardom they want. Get over, kids. Yeah. Get over. You know what I mean?
There's some shooting there. And when I say shooting, I don't mean when we talk about rap beef, it's like, oh, who's people shooting at? I mean, they're shooting in the wrestling term, which is, I think he's playing his character. He's adding maybe some truth to it, but I think it's more of is it a work or a shoot? The whole question. I think there's some shooting. I also think there's some working happening too, where I think, he's presenting kind of like backstage stuff, but still presenting himself as a tribal chief and as Roman Reigns, the wrestler. So I think it's one of those things where the best promos are usually ones that have a bit of truth to them, right? And that, I think, is probably how Roman Reigns feels, is he looks at the situation and he is someone that is now a part-time wrestler. That is the reality. He shows up. He didn't really promote this Royal Rumble match. He was not around for the build-up at all. They were playing vignettes to just tell people that Roman Reigns was going to be there. He never once showed up on Raw or SmackDown. So he's a part-time wrestler. And this is someone who, for a stretch when he was full-time, obviously held the title for 4 years. Some of that was when he was so part-time, but for the beginning of it, he was full-time. And he did get a lot of TV time, and he did get a lot of attention, and it seemed like everybody was under Roman Reigns. And with anybody in that spot comes the idea of, well, what about this guy? What about that guy? It's all about Roman. We're not building other stars. Roman makes what I feel like is a fair point, whether it's a work or a shoot, that he has not been around, which has meant that other guys have had the opportunity to step up to the plate. And if you dislike the decision to go with Roman Reigns as a Royal Rumble winner, all right, well, where have the megastars been built during this time where Roman Reigns has been gone? I think it's fair to say that they, quite frankly, haven't been built. This is more from Roman Reigns, talking about how he says WWE, and this is more pointed. This is where I think, okay, this went from work to shoot, definitely. And I kind of wonder if this is even much of a shoot. This is just this is Joe and I talking, not Roman Reigns, where he says WWE, they need to step up to the plate when it comes to their creative process.
We haven't advanced. We haven't evolved. You know what I mean? We have great leadership, and Nick Khan, God bless him, what a businessman. He's a genius. But we have to be able to keep up with that creatively. And that's why people like me, people who are striving to be the very best, the greatest, the GOATs, the MJs, I just can't sit around and see mediocrity. Not when I set it up for everybody to just slam it home.
I mean, that is a shot at Triple H. Now, again, work or shoot. I don't know what benefits WWE by saying creatively we're not evolving. The business side is good. Nick Khan, that guy, doing a good job. He's making me very rich. He's making all the other people very rich. He's good. But creatively, we're having some issues. Who's the creative side of leadership? That's Triple H. And that's him. So to me, from the first line, I can see a benefit to him saying, yo, young talent, you're not stepping up to the plate. Yeah, that helps WWE creatively. Because if Roman Reigns is saying, hey, you're not getting it done, you guys need to wake up because there's opportunities here to become the next Roman Reigns or the next John Cena, and you're not stepping up to the plate, I can see Triple H from that side saying, yeah, that's good. Yeah, get after these young guys. Whatever notes he was given to give to Pat McAfee, I cannot imagine Triple H himself, unless there's some galaxy brain stuff we can get into in a second. I can't imagine Triple H himself would say, hey, when you do this promo, interview, shoot thing, mention that I'm not doing a good job. Mention that creatively we're not stepping up to the plate. We're not giving the storylines we need. Mention that we're not evolving as a company creatively. I cannot imagine that Triple H would give Roman Reigns those notes. That feels more like Roman Reigns veering off the reservation of what he was supposed to talk about, which maybe was to kind of like, he definitely was setting up his win. I think it's like, hey, you folks that were upset about, are going to be upset about me winning, who else would you want to win? Who have you seen stepped up to the plate since I've been gone that would make sense to win this match? Who else deserves a WrestleMania main event match at this point? It's got to be me. So I think they, A, were kind of soft launching that he was going to win. B, I think that, again, I think that this was, again, an effort for him. I think for also Triple H to kind of talk through Roman and say, hey, young talent, come on, let's go. Like, I don't want to do a Vince McMahon where I get in front of the ring and yell who has ruthless aggression, because we've lost Stone Cold and we've lost The Rock, and I don't see any of the stars here. But that's where we're getting to, and we're getting close to there. I can't imagine why Triple H would then say, oh, yeah, by the way, take a shot at me. It doesn't add up. So I think that part definitely more shoot than work. And he's not wrong. He's not. I mean, creatively, WWE, and I'll say this, man, I've supported Triple H a ton. I thought he was phenomenal with NXT in terms of how he booked that. I think the overall booking of Raw, just in terms of the formatting, the matches being longer, a little more emphasis on what's going on in the ring, not so much dumb storyline stuff. I think some of that stuff has been a welcome addition. I also think that from a booking standpoint, it has lacked a lot of pizzazz. It's lacked a lot of oomph. They have not created a lot of stars. And they've had some, I think, kind of big moments that they kind of bungled. Like, they obviously bungled what happened with John Cena and his heel turn. And that shouldn't have been bungled. That should have been awesome. Because John Cena is such a great talent. And he was doing such a good job as a heel. And it just seemed like the company and the creative behind it wasn't smart. And then, it was compromised because The Rock and Travis Scott didn't do their part. But that aspect. Then kind of the end of the John Cena, once he turns face, they couldn't figure that out. And they had to shoehorn Brock Lesnar. I think the best part of that was probably the stuff with Dominic Mysterio. But then it seemed like the end was coming so quickly for John Cena. And that seemed like a thing that didn't quite finish the way we wanted to. I had no problem, by the way, with the last match. A lot of people did. It was controversial. But I think just there should have been probably better build-up, better finish, better venue for his last match. It just all seemed a little odd. And again, there have been other moments. We could talk about AJ Styles' final match. A very good match that was produced by Pierce. That I think there was nothing wrong necessarily with the actual match. It was a great match. But how do you get to AJ Styles sent off from WWE happening in Saudi Arabia? That doesn't make me feel good. I think that's a wasted opportunity. You could have had that match somewhere in Atlanta, somewhere in Georgia or in the South. You could have had it in Tennessee, where obviously he made his bed, of course, with TNA. Like, there's a lot of things they could have done to really honor AJ Styles. And I know AJ Styles, and then there's a weird thing about what this retirement is, because WWE is definitely pushing like, oh, he's never going to wrestle again. But then AJ Styles didn't put his gloves in the ring, which makes people think that maybe he will wrestle again. So I don't really know what's going on with that. But that ending to his career also seemed kind of rushed and weird. Like, they had this beautiful match with Shinsuke Nakamura that kind of just got thrown on at the end. No build-up, no anything. Like, they've had creative problems. There's just no denying it. And there's a part of me that wonders, why is that? Because I personally can't believe that Triple H forgot how to book wrestling shows. That is how I view this. I've watched Triple H. I saw what he did at NXT. He's not old. He's older, but he's not. It's not a Vince McMahon situation where you wonder if the guy is going senile because of how poorly written the show is. Because he's old. And that's just a reality. You get old, you forget. You're not as sharp. I hate to be ageist, but that's just a reality. Triple H is not at that age. He's not anywhere near that. So how can someone who a couple years ago was a brilliant wrestling booker become so mid for where he's been of late? Now, this is where I would love to have my guy Lucas Goldman, who does my wrestling show with me. Of course, that's an off script. Like, is there someone putting their thumb on the scale in a way that is not allowing the show to be booked the way they want to? Like, Lucas, when we talked, and he obviously was a writer with Vince McMahon. He was there for the last of Vince McMahon's days, the first time he was ousted. And he mentions, like, there are shareholders. There are people that are not above Vince at that time, but like people who have real stake, who are looking at the bottom lines, who are definitely putting their thumb on the scale and impacting creative decisions. Now, it's Vince. He's a crazy person. He'll probably still do whatever he wants, but it's a publicly traded company. He can't literally just do whatever the hell he wants. He has some he's beholden to some degree to his shareholders. And that was during the Vince McMahon era when he was still kind of like the guy running the show. He still was the judge, jury, and executioner. Still, even then, Lucas is saying he then had to acquiesce to like who's making the most money, who's doing X, Y, and Z, and then we're going to have to book the show around that. That's Vince. So imagine Triple H, who is not the CEO, not someone who has ownership stake. This is a company that is now under two companies. it's WWE, which is under TKO, which is under Endeavor. Like, there's now bosses on bosses on bosses, and then now Netflix is involved. Now, Peacock is still involved because of the whole thing with Saturday Night Main Event. There's now all these different factors coming into the fray, and Lucas swears to everything that he believes that terrible ending to WrestleMania with Travis Scott coming out, he fully believes that was booked by, like, Netflix or booked by TKO, Endeavor. Like, he doesn't believe that, like, Triple H, who knows wrestling, would do something that silly. And there are things about it that he points to. The fact that Travis Scott came out with that, like, customized $1,000 Travis Scott belt. The fact that he walked down the ring with it for so long. It took him forever to get to the ring. He said that was a commercial they shot. It was a commercial to get that money to sell those belts. You think Triple H cares about a damn Travis Scott belt? Like, no. He's a wrestling guy. So he makes a lot of points there. So I know online it's very easy to rush and say, Triple H sucks, he's the worst, and he's the guy running the show. He's the guy to criticize. That's fine. But I do think when we talk about WWE creative and their issues, what I've learned from working with Lucas and talking to him, and I hope one day maybe I can get him on 40 Days and 40 Nights to get on. That's actually would have been a great day to do it. I just, there's things about the company now that make me think of things much more differently, especially when things don't make sense. It makes me feel like there's some outside force that we're not seeing, which is why it doesn't make sense. Because at the end of the day, these are humans. This is not like live sports where guys just play or women just play, and then we see who wins and loses and we just move on. Like, there is scripted, of course, and then there's elements of what certain execs want to happen in order to make the most money. Like, people were surprised that Roman Reigns won in Saudi Arabia. There was no chance in hell that someone else was going to win the Royal Rumble that wasn't a massive star for the Saudi Arabian kingdom. Like, they wanted Brock Lesnar there. They wanted Cody Rhodes in the match. They wanted all these people in this match because this is, part of their work. This is part of their thing to try to, normalize Saudi Arabia. So there was no way in hell that you were gonna have even a Gunther, someone that's bigger, who's becoming a bigger star. But Gunther wasn't winning no Royal Rumble for Roman Reigns. You weren't gonna have Braun Breaker, who didn't even enter the match. He wasn't winning no Royal Rumble. Femi wasn't winning no Royal Rumble. Like, they weren't gonna make that kind of move. Now, it doesn't mean that those folks now, it looks like their storyline stuff happened with Braun Breaker. It doesn't mean necessarily that those guys won't have title matches, because there's multiple titles now. But to win the Royal Rumble that moment, you saw how long those Saudi Arabian fireworks were going off? That would have to be a 10-minute fireworks show after the Royal Rumble. You think that they were doing that after a Femi win? Or a Braun Breaker win? Like, no chance. They wanted the absolute biggest star possible. And they weren't going to give it to Brock Lesnar, so then they gave it to Roman Reigns. So that made a lot of sense. And I know I'm going on a long spiel for the creative. I promise I'll get to the actual matches, but I think those are just things to think about where they stand in terms of the people frustrated with the creative. But on the actual match, the men's match, I'll say I thought it was okay. That's the best way I can describe it. I know some people said it's awful. I didn't think it was awful. I think it, in many ways, was indicative of what a lot of Triple H's run has been as the head of WWE Creative since the Netflix era began. It's been okay. The match was okay. There were some interesting things. The Braun Breaker getting attacked by a masked man who does the curb stomp, but doesn't appear to be Seth Rollins. Because I said it was Seth Rollins at first. But now I've seen the stills of people looking at the face, and the guy's build looks like Seth Rollins. In terms of, like, he's kind of long, he's kind of whatever. Like, I think build-wise, he kind of looks like Seth. But the face underneath the mask, because they actually cut out eyes and cut out his mouth, it looks more like Logan Paul. Some people mentioned maybe it could be Jake Paul. I think Jake Paul's a little shorter, so I don't think it's Jake. Jake, of course, being Logan Paul's brother. It looks more like Logan Paul, which makes me wonder if there's going to be some kind of blow up within the realm of the vision that they're trying to build into, where they're going to build this as, oh, this is Seth trying to get after Braun Breaker, and then we're going to realize that it wasn't Seth at all. It was actually Logan Paul. Is it possible Logan Paul's working for Seth Rollins, and he's the mole? There's a lot of different ways they can go with that. Did I love it? That's one of those things where I'm going to have to wait and see what happens in order to say whether or not I liked it or not. Because I thought this could have been a good moment for Braun Breaker to have a deep run in the Royal Rumble, maybe one of the last 4 guys, to kind of really fully illustrate him as a future main eventer. There's also a possibility that maybe WWE is not as hot on Braun Breaker as they were just a couple of months ago. So I don't know. There's multiple ways they can go. It's very clear he's not in the title picture. That loss to John Cena was his title match that they built it up to that feud, and now that's the end. I'll be honest, a little surprised that I felt like they were building towards Cena. Okay, Punk will have the title, but the guy they're building him up to lose to kind of put over a young guy would be Braun Breaker, and they didn't. So it makes it interesting where they go with CM Punk, which we'll get to in a moment. I thought Overfemi, who led the Rumble, obviously he eliminated Braun Breaker, eliminated a bunch of other people. I thought it was a really good showing. He looked strong. WWE has to, unless they probably don't care, but they probably should, because that was being noticeable. Brock Lesnar being like the thorn in the side of black talent, they got to find a way to get around that. Like, I know, I guess technically Bobby Lashley has a win over Brock Lesnar, so there's that going for them. But he beat Kofi for the title. He beat Big E for the title in what was like a fatal 4-way match. So he didn't, and pinned him. He didn't have to pin Big E. There's just a lot of things that point to, like, it seems like whenever there's a big black star that's really getting over, Brock Lesnar is the big dude they bring out to take him out. And of course, Obafemi's having what I thought was a really great showing. He had to stand up for Brock Lesnar, which to me should have ended with him eliminating Brock Lesnar. That would have made the most sense. Brock Lesnar could have done the damage he did, but then when he met someone like Obafemi, that's when he met his match. And he eliminates Obafemi? I don't know. I wasn't in love with that, especially given Brock Lesnar then got eliminated during Jey Uso's entrance, which that was not handled well. Like, to me, when that happened, I thought, oh, maybe they'll build Brock and Jey Uso, because Brock will be upset, like he was distracted by the fact that Jey Uso is still doing his yeets, doing his hands up, hands down celebration while he's trying to concentrate a match and he gets eliminated. I don't even know. I forgot who even eliminated him. But, like, it was kind of weird. It was kind of like they kind of barely caught it. I was like, oh, my God, Brock Lesnar's gone. And then he kind of just walked around the ring, he was upset a little bit, and Jey Uso just went into the ring, and that was it. It was nothing. Now, do they parlay that into maybe tonight Brock Lesnar attacks, Jey Uso? Maybe they will set something out, maybe. But that seemed like the obvious thing. Oh, let's have Brock Lesnar set his sights on Jey Uso because he messed up his open. I don't think that was something that made sense. That was not something that added up to me. To waste him, eliminate Obafemi, to only then have him say, you know what? Let's have let's have him get eliminated during someone's entrance. He's Brock Lesnar. I don't really understand that. So I didn't love that aspect of the match. I did think it was a great showing for Javon Evans, who had some really good spots, showed off his athleticism. He's definitely a guy who there's been questions about, do people see him as a future world champion? Is he more of a, kind of a novelty act? And the dirt sheets will put out everything, so who knows what people actually think inside the building. I do know he was booked like someone that they really care about, and I thought he had, again, some really good moments. The crowd seemed to be behind him. His athleticism is, you can't teach. And you can't teach what he can do in the ring. He is just special, and he's only 21 years old. So he's got plenty of room to grow. He's one of those guys where I love Javon Evans, but for wrestling fans and the IWC, I kind of caution. We're like, I know you guys love him like I do, but, like, he is young. Like, let's let them develop him correctly. I think that they missed an opportunity not putting him in the position of a champion on NXT, because I think that would have been a great experience for him. I think they moved him up in part because it was like, again, where are the young stars here? I think they had no choice. I think they looked at Obafemi and they looked at Javon Evans and Trick Williams. They were like, we got 3 stars here that, again, whether or not they're world champions, we could decipher over. But at the very least, they could come into the main roster and immediately make an impact and immediately grab eyeballs, because they all 3 have different things. Javon's athleticism and kind of like just overall enthusiasm for life. You got Obafemi and just his massive presence. Like him, it was crazy seeing him stand next to Brock Lesnar. He looked bigger than Brock. He is massive. That's also why I thought it was ridiculous to have Brock eliminate him. I'm like, it was believable he could get Brock the F out of here. It was believable. Sometimes you put that guy next to Brock Lesnar, you got to have the question, like, is it believable this guy can actually beat Brock Lesnar? And if it's no, sometimes it's hard to actually book it. It's wrestling. Who cares? But that is a thing that bookers and wrestling writers and stuff, people think about. With Obafemi, and actually, something that I know Drew McIntyre talked about when he was pursuing Brock Lesnar for the title. And he mentioned that, like, one of the things he looked at when he was coming back to WWE, like before when he was in the Indies, in terms of how he was going to change up his look, change up his game, he said, I wanted to build my body in a way that it looked believable that I could be in the ring with Brock Lesnar. That's literally what he said. This was years and years ago. And then it was ironic that he had to beat Brock Lesnar and win a title match. But again, when he steps in the Royal Rumble, he eliminates Brock Lesnar. Like, it doesn't look crazy. It looks like, yeah, he looks physically imposing. He looks strong. Like, I know he's not booked like Brock Lesnar, where Brock Lesnar can beat people in 2-3 minutes. He can squash people. He's this big monster. But it looks like, from a physical standpoint, he could stand up to Brock. Obafemi looks bigger than both Drew McIntyre and Brock Lesnar. So I looked at this and I was like, and Brock's got the gray hair. I'm like, he shouldn't be knocking out Obafemi. And maybe they're going to build that as a potential WrestleMania match. We'll see. We can talk about the other titles in a second, but I thought that was a little bit of a missed opportunity. Not have Oba eliminate Brock Lesnar. And you could have had Cody Rhodes or someone else eliminate what's the name? I thought that was a mistake. I didn't like that. But I did think he was good when he was in there. There were some fun moments. Mr. Iguana moment I thought was fun. I was a little surprised Joe Hendry didn't show up. I think that I have no idea why. There might have been some visa issues, because that's a big deal with these travel shows, especially to Saudi Arabia. So I don't know if that has something to do with why he wasn't there. That would have been a good comedy moment, but they got a good comedy moment with Mr. Iguana. Miz comes in and does his thing as a comedy act as well. He was great in this. The Cody stuff is still interesting. If you ask me where they're going with this, because Cody, of course, is eliminated by Drew McIntyre. That feud is far from over. And he still has this kind of on-site feud with Jacob Fatu, who was in this match, who was going after Cody Rhodes and actually got distracted by Cody Rhodes' elimination, and that allowed Roman Reigns to eliminate him. Fatu wasn't in the match as long. He didn't make kind of the impact I would have hoped, to be honest, considering, I still think he's a star in the making. Now, he's a program with Cody Rhodes, so it's not much bigger progress he could be in right now. But the actual Royal Rumble match ended up not being as much of a showcase for him that I thought it would be, especially coming back after the injury and everything. But I think I may be on the outside of this. I wonder if we're getting CM Punk versus Roman Reigns. And I wonder if that's going to actually end up being the night 2 main event. Because this Cody Drew McIntyre thing, it's a pretty good feud. And they've been building it up now for a little bit. And now you got Fatu in the mix. Is this getting wrapped up in a neat bow by Elimination Chamber? I don't know. Now, the only thing I can say is maybe if you put the title on the line, Elimination Chamber, and you got Drew McIntyre putting up against Cody Rhodes, Jacob Fatu, and then you throw in some other people on SmackDown, maybe I can see that being a case where he drops the belt and they feel like they can kind of separate him away from that. But where things stand right now, it feels very still up in the air. Still feels very much like there's a lot to do. Now, we have time. It's 2 months for 2 months for WrestleMania. But is that getting wrapped up in a month? I don't know. I'm starting to wonder if you look at the Raw roster, where someone mentioned that belt's kind of become the Unk belt, where it's like CM Punk's got it, and he's kind of like the Unk, and some of the guys that he's competing with for the title are older as well. Maybe they want to put some juice behind the world title in a way that it hasn't had since its inception. If you put that as the final night of WrestleMania and it's Roman Reigns versus CM Punk, remember, what's the show that belt is on? It's on Netflix. Netflix is paying WWE $1 billion. I'd assume they would. You don't think they would love some Roman Reigns CM Punk moments leading up to that match? I think they may go another way. They put out that stuff about Cody versus Roman 3, and they saw the internet reaction was not all that thrilled about it. I think they could be pivoting. And they could say, you know what, we're gonna move Roman to Raw, because maybe they were expecting that to be maybe an Obafemi moment, maybe a Braun Breaker moment, but they kind of saw the way the teams were going and saying, let's move in a different direction. Let's have Roman. I know they had their kind of fist bump, kind of like respect moment during the Survivor Series War Games match, but they could also look at it as a respect. You're good, and that's why I want to face you one-on-one. Last year, that idiot Seth Rollins got in the way of our one-on-one match, and him and Paul Heyman. This year, let's do it right. Night 2, not night 1. And this year, let's have it a true 1v1. It's a huge match. It definitely would make people invested in sell. I think the promos would be phenomenal. And in some ways, I felt like the Seth Rollins aspect of that. The triple threat was a great match, and it was a good build, but it definitely was missing something. I didn't think it should have. I thought there was a chance it wouldn't close. I thought there was a chance that they might close with the women. Like, that's how much of that feud was good, but, it was kind of like, we'll see what happens. I think this year it could be a lot different. Now, CM Punk's on the cover of WWE 2K26, so that also maybe gives you a reason to say maybe he deserved that last spot on night 2. I just wonder if this is becoming we do Drew and Cody Rhodes as a full end to a months-long feud. Maybe Jacob Fatu's in there as well, and then we move Roman to Raw, and we make that the big match on that side. That's the energy and vibe I get for where they may be going with this in terms of how that match set up. LA Knight returned. It was great to see LA Knight. He just looks stuck. Like, I think for those that love LA Knight, I think this is time to wave the white flag in hopes that he's going to eventually become a world champion. And I don't like saying that or feeling that way. It is how I feel, though. I thought that would have been a moment to, at the very least, establish him as one of the last 3 or 4 guys in the match. And he got also eliminated fairly early. They did let him eliminate the Vision, which was pretty big. But outside of that, for a guy who entered late, he didn't last as long as I thought he would have. So, match was fine. Roman wins fine. He beats Gunther. They protected Gunther by putting the fact that he was in the calf crusher and he was limping throughout the match. They put him over in the fact that he was still able to eliminate people and be one of the last guys left. But, Roman eliminates him while he's hampered. It protects him. It sets up what you may see at some point down the line with a Roman Gunther match that kind of writes itself. So the finish was predictable but fine, and Roman Reigns will go on to win to become the headliner for WrestleMania. We'll see who ends up facing. I'm probably on the outside on this, thinking that it's going to be CM Punk, but obviously there's a lot of time for WrestleMania, so we'll see what happens. On the women's side, real quick, so Liv Morgan wins. I thought the women's match was actually great. I thought that it I can't say the pay-per-view was like a complete miss because I really enjoyed the women's match. I thought it was one of the better women's pay-per-views that they had. Women's Rumble matches that they had. Now, you didn't have a ton of surprises. This was not it's a surprise fest. And I have some concerns now about what Bianca Belair's health is, considering she couldn't make it to this match. She's been out for almost a year now, it feels like. A little less than a year, but she's been out, 7-8 months at this point? She had a broken finger. I'm not trying to diss broken fingers, but you would think, okay, a broken finger, at the most, that's a 3-month injury, maybe. And I know it was kind of severe, but the fact that she still isn't around makes me kind of, again, a little concerned. Like, I hope she's okay. I hope that maybe there wasn't some other injury she dealt with in rehab or during her time off. That is why she's still not there. It's bizarre that it's been just radio silence on what's been going on with Bianca Belair. But everyone just assumed she'd be back. It was like, oh, of course, this is the moment. You put her in. There's an obvious story to be told with her and Jade Cargill now that Jade is the women's champion. And they just didn't go that route. She wasn't there. I don't know if Elimination Chamber is where she may return. But then I'll be honest, for someone who dealt with at least a finger injury, but maybe there's some other injury she's dealing with, are you really bringing her back to one of your most dangerous matches that you have? Maybe your most dangerous match? They've done a ton to try to make it more safer than it was when that lunatic Eric Bischoff made the whole Elimination Chamber idea. But it's still a dangerous match. You're going to put her in there to begin? Why would you put her in a Rumble where you can protect her? Yes, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of bodies, but she's not center stage. She can take a lot of rest. There's a lot of ways you can hide somebody in a Royal Rumble, and they can still win. You can't hide somebody in an Elimination Chamber. Like, there's really not much you can do. It's very unforgiving. So I don't know. I kind of wonder if Bianca is just still off the board leading up to WrestleMania, which once she was off the board, Liv was the obvious other choice, and they went that route, which is, again, I think fine. I think there's a clear way they could go about this in multiple spots for this Liv Morgan winning. Liv is great. She's a star. Like, we talk about, they had that commercial where they had all the women like in like the Las Vegas like promo. This was like maybe months ago, and I believe all the women were there. They had like Tiffany Stratton. She was like the first person. She was like the narrator of it. They had Stratton. They had Charlotte. They had Becky. I don't know if Bayley was there, but the usual suspects. And then like they had an addition to the commercial, and it was Liv Morgan. I think that was them kind of telling you maybe then like Liv Morgan's gonna win the Royal Rumble, and this is who's gonna be kind of the main attraction in terms of like the headliner of WrestleMania from the women's aspect of this. She deserves that spot. Like, to me, that commercial was actually fitting because it was like, yeah, she is the missing piece of who are the mega stars when it comes to the women in this division. Liv Morgan has transcended just wrestling star and just people wrestling fans. Like, I think she is now a true draw. She's come back. I think she has brought life and energy to the Raw show since she's been back, bringing more life and energy to the Judgment Day, and it just makes too much sense because now it sets up one of two things: either Raquel eventually vanquishes Stephanie Vaquer, and now you have your Shawn Michaels Diesel match that everyone kind of has always been expecting would happen, where you got the big guy, or now big gal, and the little guy and little gal that's been protected by the big guy and big gal. They now go after it because, one gets jealous of the other, and then the big gal realizes, hey, I've been actually saving your ass quite a bit for most of your career, and why am I doing this? I should be the bigger star. And I think that Raquel Rodriguez has become one of the most improved just performers on the roster. Forget women. This program she's been with Vaquer, she has stepped up to a level that I think a lot of people were not sure she could step up to. This has been the Raquel Gonzalez that I remembered in NXT that we've seen of late. The woman that was working big. Kevin Nash had the advice for her. I think she's seen a lot of the growth in her abilities. She's been awesome. So you can go that route. Or if they really do like, Stephanie Vaquer, which I do. I think Stephanie Vaquer is a star, and she's been great. I think her title run has been fine. I don't think it's been special. I don't think she's probably had the matches that would require for her to have those moments. Like, she hasn't gotten Io, she hasn't gotten Rhea Ripley. I think they're holding on to those matches. I think she hasn't had the talent to work with that maybe would allow her to have those big moments to really put this title reign over. But I think that a program with Liv Morgan could definitely do that, where I think it would help both of them. I would probably lean toward Liv winning the title at that point in time, because I think she's she's become a huge star, and she has crossover appeal now. So I would lean toward Liv winning that title, and that's how Stephanie Vaquer's pretty long at this point title reign ends. But that's, I think, where that route goes. But I thought it was a good match. Again, I really like Brie Bella's entrance. That was shocking to me. But the match itself, well executed. A great moment for Sol Ruca. I mentioned this when I was talking to my friends who were watching it. I don't think an NXT person had ever. I'm not sure they ever lasted that long. I know Roxanne Perez had a long run at one year. I don't remember. That might be the only person that maybe lasted longer in the match. I don't think any NXT person, both men's or women's side, was in the final three. With Sol Ruca is there, and I didn't think she had a chance to win the Royal Rumble, but the fact that she was in the bottom three shows that they really believe in her, and she's similar to Javon Evans. Like, that athleticism you can't teach, and that look you can't teach. So she has money written all over her, and I think they wanted this to be the showcase for that. I was a little surprised that they took a little more chances with the booking for the women's side, just because it wasn't Saudi Arabia. I thought you would maybe see more of your usual suspects, your Charlottes being deep into it, and she had a long run, but wasn't in the last bit. Becky Lynch got eliminated a little bit earlier than I would have expected for sure. They centered this around the return of Tiffany Stratton as number 30. Tiffany Stratton was hurt. She wasn't she was out that long, but she was out long enough to where it was noticeable that she's been out. So they built it for a return. She did not win. Stratton's in a weird spot. I mentioned this on Friday. I feel like they gotta find a way to turn her heel. I think that there was a moment where Tiffy time was so over that you couldn't continue to try to get this woman to get booed. I think they're at the point now where they can. Because I think her working as babyface still doesn't quite work. I hate the Royal Rumble for a return for somebody who's eventually going to turn heel like immediately. Because I think it just doesn't make sense why they didn't act heel when we watched them a couple days ago. But I would expect that to still happen at this point. But you didn't get AJ Lee. You didn't get Bianca Belair. So this was one that was a bit short on the surprises. But I think in terms of just being a well-executed Royal Rumble match, I think they did a good job with that. So Raw comes on in a half hour. I'll definitely be into it. I'm definitely curious what they end up doing with that. But it was a fine show. I thought the Sami Zayn losing, that was to kind of be expected. I think that they still have so much more meat on the bone with Drew McIntyre and what's happening with that match and what's happening with him and Cody and him and Jacob Fatu. So I'm not surprised that Sami Zayn didn't win. I think Sami Zayn will eventually become world champion. It just wasn't going to be in Saudi Arabia in that moment in time. That's not going to happen. So Sami loses. As I mentioned, AJ Styles. A phenomenal, no pun intended, a phenomenal match. A very well-produced match. A good match. Which is why I was kind of annoying. Because I felt like, man, I would love to have seen that in front of an American crowd. The whole setup was weird. There were times where like you looked in the crowd and it looked empty, but then like people had crowd shots from the crowd, and I don't know what's AI or whatever, but these look real. Shots from the crowd, people taking pictures from their phones, showing that no, there are people in these seats, but because like of the lighting and how it was set up, and they had these like for lack of a better term, like these like strobe lights in between each seat that were very white, so you could see all these white dots in the crowd. It didn't look like there were people next to them. It looked like there was just lights outside the front row of the arena. So you couldn't really see the audience, which I think also kind of was weird. There were times where it looked empty, and the crowd itself was okay. They popped for Brie, which was good. They popped for certain people that they were supposed to pop for. But I think knowing the Royal Rumble, knowing what it means to American fans and how they respond to it, or really, you could have put it in Europe and they would have responded better. It's just never a great aesthetic. It looked, in terms of just like the stage, looked really cool stage. The long ramp, like it felt like a big deal. That part of it they nailed because they built that arena in like a day, it seemed like. But they have all the money in the world, so they did that and that worked out okay. But there was this aspect of it that just always make it weird. WrestleMania next year is gonna suck. Like, I'm not looking forward to that. We have nothing we do about it. Like, we're gonna watch, but it just doesn't present the aesthetic, and the crowd is just not into it in the way. It's just a weird setup. It's gonna continue to be weird. I know why they do it, and they want that bag, but it doesn't necessarily help the company from a aesthetic. Just watching the show standpoint, it doesn't do much for me at all. Let's keep it moving here. Again, this is 48, 49, your boy EJ Stewart. Some other stories before we get out of here. I mentioned this earlier, and I feel a little vindicated. Not that other people couldn't come to this case, because Kendall kind of mentioned it on Friday. But after seeing Kawhi Leonard not make the All-Star game, I had said earlier today that I kind of wonder if this is a situation where, I don't know if the NBA coaches themselves wanted to put this on Kawhi, or if the word got out that it was time to put this on Kawhi. But the fact that he was not an all-star on LeBron James was, when his numbers are so much better than LeBron James's. And better than some other guys that made the team, by the way. If you want to make a case he should have made it over some of these other guys, I would have understood. Definitely raising an eyebrow. Especially considering the game is being played in his home arena. But I think the reason why he was left off potentially could be because the game is being played in his home arena. And because the NBA doesn't want the distraction of what happened leading up into training camp and the offseason, where there was a story that Papa Torre unveiled, where there are these people who worked for this company who firmly believe that Kawhi Leonard was signed as an ambassador purely to circumvent the cap for the Clippers. This was a company that was a tree planting company at Aspiration that Steve Ballmer had invested money in, and it seems quite weird that Steve Ballmer and other folks from the Clippers ownership were investing just the right amount of money that it was needed for the Clippers to sign Kawhi Leonard to what would have been a Supermax deal. Just seems odd. Just seemed odd that they were able to get just the right amount of money that would piece together the money that Kawhi in theory could have left on the table for the Clippers. So Brian Windhorst noticed it. Apparently he says, this was on NBA Today as well, it's a big Brian Windhorst day on the show, that other NBA people noticed it as well.
The reaction within the league has been kind of universal between the executives and I've talked to, which is Kawhi Leonard doesn't make the team. So, okay, that happens. Players get snubbed. Kawhi's numbers are phenomenal, but the game is obviously add into it, Dome. And the wonder is, did he not make this team because the coaches didn't vote for him because of the accusations of the improper contract? So, like he is having a brilliant season, his highest scoring season as a Clipper. They have been one of the best teams in the league for the last 6 weeks.
Yeah, it's a good question. He's playing great. The Clippers recently have been playing great. Like, whatever, like, I always make the joke that, like, these players do the what I call the Damian Lillard, where they're about to vote for the All-Star Game reserves, and the players know it, and they're on the fringe, and then that's when you start to see, oh, Damian Lillard had 2 straight 40-point games. Oh, look at John Wall just had a 30-point triple-double. He was kind of struggling recently, and now he's playing great. And I'm like, yeah, they're trying to get that All-Star Game, fool. That's why. And Damian Lillard, I tell you, was the master at it. There are so many years I was like, oh, man, this might be the year Damian Lillard doesn't make it. Like, there's some other guards in the West that are playing great. And then he scored 60. Like, it always was the same time of the year. You could always clock it. It was going to be around the last few weeks of January. Damian Lillard was going to have his hottest stretch of the season because he was fighting like hell trying to get to that All-Star Game. And for years earlier, it was hard. It was hard to crack through. He wasn't making it in a couple of years. And he knew the game and how to figure it out. And the players could be struggling. He might not be playing that great. In the last few weeks, he put together performances that made it undeniable to put him in the All-Star Game. And to me, like Kawhi Leonard, how the Clippers have played, it seemed like there were guys in that team that were like, yo, we got to try to find him to get this All-Star Game and turn the season around. And Kawhi has been a dog. Like, he's been playing great this year. So, other NBA execs also believing that, like, this thing could be a reason why he's not at the All-Star Game. And that sucks just from the nature of I'm one of those old fogies who, while the All-Star Game sucks and I've given up on that becoming a thing anymore, I do believe the honor of becoming an All-Star is still a thing. Is still important. Maybe it's not as important for Kawhi Leonard, but because he's a two-time NBA Finals MVP, but he's playing at an All-Star level. He deserves to be an All-Star. So the fact that he won't be because of this thing, I guess you could say it's his own fault. I don't know if I love the NBA coaches taking a stance on this, if that's what happened. This kind of sounds like the Bill Belichick stuff we talked about last week where, Bill Polian may have wrangled some voters to vote against Bill Belichick as a one-year penance. I wouldn't have expected NBA coaches to really care about this thing. It sounds like something more of a GM ownership thing that would make more sense. Now, you could get the directive from ownership to say, hey, don't vote for Kawhi Leonard because of what happened. We don't like what happened. Maybe. But if we're assuming it's not an Adam Silver NBA ownership type scandal that's happening or, conspiracy, if it was just the coaches, it seems weird that they would hold that against him. But it just speaks to how egregious his ouster is, I think, when it's compared to LeBron. I feel like if you put Alfred Şengün in there, I know it's weird, but it's like, okay, well, Alfred Şengün is like, he's arguably the best player on the Raptors. You could argue him and Durant, and they're a very good team. Okay. It's just, you compare LeBron's numbers to his numbers, and they play kind of similar positions, similar roles in their team, and it's like, he couldn't make the All-Star game, but LeBron did. And again, there's, with the All-Star game comes a lot more media attention, comes a lot more questions, a lot more conversations about what's happening around the league, a lot more media types show up at the All-Star game. There are a lot more conversations that happen, which means a lot more questions can be asked about the aspiration scandal. In fact, it probably comes back into the forefront in a way that it hasn't. It's kind of been buried at this point in time. It was the talk of NBA training camp. It's not been the talk of late. It changes if you decide, okay, let's actually, do this thing where we're going to put Kawhi in the All-Star game and say, oh, Kawhi, I remember him. Wait, we're in Los Angeles. Wait, we're actually in the arena that is owned by Steve Ballmer. Wait, isn't that the whole aspiration thing? Let's talk about it. You can see where 1 + 1 = 2 in that situation where that becomes the talk of the All-Star game. So I mentioned it earlier. Kendall predicted it, that he wondered if that would be a reason why Kawhi gets left off weeks ago. He was right about that, and he was left off. And now I said this morning, I think that there's definitely a reason why, considering it was LeBron who got that spot. That would maybe lead to maybe this aspiration thing being a thing. Apparently, according to Brian Windhorst, we're not alone in that thinking. Some other stories quickly before we get out of here, man. So, Mariners closed in on a 3-team deal here. I'm not sure if it was official by now. Obviously, I've been doing this show and I haven't been much, obviously on the internet. But they are closing in on a 3-team deal to acquire All-Star Brendan Donovan from the St. Louis Cardinals. This would include a deal with not just the Cardinals, but the Rays will be involved as well. I haven't seen. Well, here's some of the stuff I can read here from in terms of who's going on in this trade. So, according to Jeff Passan, the deal, which had been one of multiple 3-way trades the Cardinals were considering for Donovan. It's done. Sorry, I think it is done. So, apologies if it's not done. So it says the Mariners acquired Brendan Donovan on Monday. Sources told the Atlanta Universal. It's weird because ESPN, the headline still says near deal, so that made it confusing. But apparently, according to Jeff Passan, that it's done here. But the deal, which had been one of multiple 3-way trades the Cardinals were just considering, for Donald, sent right-hander Durangelo this name is Sinjante. Apologies for that pronunciation. This is a crazy name, to be clear. This is not me like just being a gringo here. He's a number 95 prospect on the top 100 list. He's the centerpiece that's going to the Cardinals. The Mariners also traded Ben Williamson, third baseman, to the Rays, who sent some more prospects to the Cardinals. So Donovan had been a pretty, there have been multiple teams that have been interested in Donovan. There were calls from both Mets and Yankee fans I was taking at the fan that wanted Brendan Donovan. He's very versatile. He could play multiple infield spots, second and third. He also plays some outfield. He plays good defense. He is a low strikeout guy. He's a high contact guy. He's a good player. So I get why this is a move that I think is not gonna, be the biggest blockbuster. But I think considering you saw them allow, Eugenio Suarez to go out the back door and he goes to the Reds, and you had to replace him with a very different player. But I think someone who, to be honest, they probably is better suited for this team than Suarez was. Like, I guess the threat of having 2 home run thumpers like Suarez and Raleigh obviously got them pretty close to getting to the World Series, but they didn't get over the hump yet. This allows them to be a better defensive team because Donovan can play multiple positions and play it really well. And for a team that has a lot of depth in their lineup, this is another guy that gets on base a ton. That hits for a high contact, has some power as well. He's just a solid piece. And the Mariners, as you look at that American League, the American League, I've been saying, is nothing like the National League in my opinion. I think it is I don't say a JV league, but it's definitely not at the level of in my opinion, the National League where things stand. This is going to be one of those teams that's going to be in the mix. Like, their starting pitching is really strong. They have a lineup that includes, obviously, the Big Dumper and Julio Rodriguez. Now you add Donovan to the mix. The Mariners, I think when you look at the AL West, still look like the team to beat to me. I think Texas will have a better year than they had this past season. I feel like Houston's day is kind of come and gone. But I think some of the teams, and the American League will be a little unpredictable, but I think the teams that you kind of saw that were in the mix last year in the American League, I think you're going to see a lot of the same teams. Baseball can be weird. There are teams that win 95, 96 games the year before. The next year, they're nowhere in the picture because that's just how baseball works sometimes. We saw the Mets go from being a 100-win team a couple years ago to way out of the postseason the next year. I think we kind of have our top teams in the American League. They're kind of entrenched. And I think Seattle is one of those teams. I think you consider the guys they have in their rotation and a lineup that I think is only going to get better. I don't expect Kyle Raleigh to, hit a cliff. I think Julio Rodriguez, now that he kind of settles into his role, it's kind of like the second star on the team. Actually, I think he may end up having kind of a breakout year. Bringing in Josh Naylor was huge. I thought that was a great pickup. And, of course, they still have Randy Arozarena. And now you add some defense and a guy who also can swing the bat a little bit in Brandon Donovan. I think this was a good move. Looking at them, looking at the Blue Jays, and you're looking at the Yankees, those were, to me, the 3 best teams in the American League last year. I think you come into this year, I think they're still probably the 3 best teams moving forward. But big move and a good move, I believe, by the Mariners. They didn't give up anything astronomical, it seems, to get Brendan Donovan, And now he goes to Seattle. He becomes the next piece on a team that is knocking on the door of trying to get to the World Series for the first time in franchise history. And we'll wrap up with this, man. I want to get into boxing. I know this is the one of the few Infinity Stones that I haven't gotten to at all, and I love boxing. But it was a big fight this weekend. Shakur Stevenson beats Teofimo Lopez in convincing fashion to win the WBO junior welterweight title. This really, to me, was really the culmination of Shakur Stevenson kind of fully realizing his potential as one of boxing's, I'll say, significant stars. I'm going to hold off on superstar because I do think there is an aspect of the showmanship, knockout power that is missing, but his talent is undeniable. And this was going to be the moment we were going to be tested. He's facing Teofimo Lopez, who is extremely tested, is a really good fighter, and he made Teofimo Lopez look extremely mid. This was a dominant performance. Shakur Stevenson's defense was awesome. He just peppered Lopez up and down all throughout the night. His jab was awesome. He was able to obviously get out of the way of a lot of Teofimo's power punches. He was able to avoid the right hand. He knew when it was coming, and he was checking it. He was blocking. He was getting out of the way. And this was a big night. Madison Square Garden, big moment. I think this was a fight that people were interested in because we wondered. Stevenson has been mentioned as this great young defensive fighter. What happens when he goes up against a guy who is a true knockout guy and a guy who also has a good level of skill? Teofimo is not just a guy who just is a knockout guy. He also has pretty good skills. Great. I think now we can say no because of what happened with Shakur Stevenson. But I think a guy that prior to this night, you might have said had great skills. We learned that there's level to this. And Shakur Stevenson now, when we think about the best pound-for-pound guys, he needs to be part of that conversation. If Bud Crawford is now retired, which he says he is, I think when you're talking about the top 5 guys or so, like, this is as impressive a win as anybody's going to have this year. There's a chance he may box again later this year as well. He didn't take a lot of punishment, so there's no reason why he wouldn't be able to. But Shakur Stevenson, who is a guy, of course, was a silver medalist at the Olympics, and he was someone that, again, was kind of, we saw the other. So you always know who the young guys are coming up that people like by what current boxers who are in their prime wrap their arms around. Who wants to be big bro to the young guys coming up? You saw Floyd Mayweather want to put their arms around this young man. You saw Bud Crawford still is a true mentor to this young man. Andre Ward, mentor, putting their arm around young bro. Like, they wanted to be around young bro because they know young bro has the goods, and he showed it. He showed it. I'm very curious where he goes next. They kind of teased him and Conor Benn. Benn's, of course, a welterweight, so he would have to go up another weight class in order to face someone like Conor Benn. There's a whole situation about whether or not Conor Benn wants to do a rehydration clause. I don't know if this is all for nothing, but these guys have had it back and forth a couple of times. They had it back and forth through Ariel Helwani's show. That went kind of viral. They then had the conversation they had in the ring. Shakur is really, I was impressed, man. And I'm someone who I was pretty high on Shakur earlier in his career, and there were some lackluster performances toward the end of his time in the super lightweight division that kind of made you think, who is is he really that good? And is this lack of power a problem? He looks like one of the guys. Maybe he doesn't really knock out anybody of note for the rest of his career, but he is a special defensive fighter. That is clear, because Teofimo Lopez, who is, I think, a really good to great offensive boxer, had no chance in this match. It was clear early that this was going to be a long night for him. And Stevenson, man, shout out to him. Shout out to Brick City, Newark. They get a semi-hometown win across the river with Stevenson winning. He is now junior welterweight champion. I mean, the match I want to see is obvious. I don't know how good it would be because these are obviously they're two defensive fighters, and with boxing it's so weird. You don't know this guy's promotion with that promotion, so then they have to come up to a deal and it doesn't work out. I don't know what that is. Don't tell me. Don't ask me how to get to it. But I want to see eventually. Well, there's 2 fights. One I think we probably could see, but again, the politics of it, I don't know. One I'm not sure about, considering the other guy's issues. I want to see Shakur Stevenson versus Devin Haney. That's the thing one of the fights we've been talking about for a long time. That I think if you're looking at what like the young guys that were coming up around the same time that we were excited about, who the guys we want to see, that to me is the two young stars. Like essentially, who's going to step into that new mantle that Bud Crawford we knew was going to leave for American fighters in that like welterweight kind of like junior welterweight era. Those were the two guys we were looking at. I want to see that fight potentially, but again, the positives of it makes me wonder if that's going to happen at this point. That feels like that should be a bigger fight maybe later in their careers. That's what it feels like to me. A Conor Bennett would be a good fight. I want to see that as well. But then the other main one, which I think is probably not as much on the table, would be Gervonta Tank Davis. That's the other huge fight that I think everyone wants to see. That is where you're talking about a true knockout artist who also can box up against what looks like an elite defensive fighter. That looks like that could be an awesome fight, and that I think would be a big money fight too. That's the biggest money fight out there for Tank Davis, and I think I've always felt deep down that was the one guy Tank Davis really didn't want to see. And Tank Davis has mentioned now, why do I gotta fight Shakur Stevenson? Who is he beating? And Shakur Stevenson, again, a lot of people didn't want to fight Shakur Stevenson because he's a defensive fighter, so you're not going to get a lot when it comes to like excitement. So what kind of draw is he? And good luck hitting that guy. Now I think Shakur Stevenson is beating some good fighters now. Now he's a champion. Now he has, I think by all accounts, you have to say he's a star in boxing for sure. Now I feel like there's no reason to duck him from that standpoint unless you just don't want to deal with the mess of having to actually beat this guy. The question I would have, though, is Tank Davis, I think he just got arrested again for some, I believe it was the domestic battery situation. He's had these issues and these allegations and these charges for him throughout his career. It feels like he's starting to enter a stage that's a little concerning in terms of like what his career is going to be moving forward. And of course, just from forget career, like get your life together, bro. Like if this is something that you're continuing to have problems with, get some help. We all obviously, there's no excuse to be him to put himself in situations where he's allegedly being aggressive or violent towards women. That is completely, utterly unacceptable. So he's out. Obviously the legal situation will play out, and those allegations will be tried in court, or they'll be whatever how that will go. But you hope that he can figure out that he's got to get his act together, get his life together, and if that can happen at some point in time, that's the mega fight for Shakur Stevenson that's out there. And it just doesn't feel like it's around the corner because Tank is dealing with so many legal issues of late. He couldn't do the Jake Paul fight because, well, we don't know why he couldn't do the Jake Paul fight. Jake Paul says it was because of the legal issues, but I don't actually know. But he did have legal issues leading up to the Jake Paul fight, which canceled that fight. He's continued that legal issue since that fight happened. So there's a lot happening in Tank Davis's life that he needs to take care of in a serious way. But if you can get a Tank Davis versus a Shakur Stevenson, that's your next mega fight. I think that's on the table. It's that or the Haney fight. Those are the two to me. But shout out to Shakur, man. Really, really impressive performance. And before we get out of here, staying in boxing, I mentioned before I saw something that I thought I'd never see. Never thought I'd see in all the years I've watched boxing, which off and on begins probably the first fight I remember ever watching was Oscar De La Hoya. Oscar Robertson. What am I talking about? The first fight I remember as a kid was watching Oscar De La Hoya versus Pernell Whitaker. That's the last fight. That's the earliest fight I remember. I don't know what year that was. Actually, what year was that? I'm going to do some research real quick. De La Hoya versus Whitaker. When was that? Let's see. That's 97. So I'm 6 years old. But that's about right. That's usually when people say, like, you can, like, remember things. 97, that's around the time I feel like I remember things about the Knicks and things like that. Things about the Jets. Like, that feels right. 97. So that's 6 years old. I'm now 34. So that's almost 30 years now as a boxing fan. On and off. I thought I'd seen it all in boxing. I thought I'd seen it all in sports. And then this happened. A boxer by the name of Jarrell Miller lost his hairpiece in the middle of a match. And when I tell you, like, I'm going to show you these images, and you're not, like, if you, they went super viral. I feel like you have to have seen it. But I had to talk about it. I wasn't talking about it this morning. I didn't get time to talk about it. I was going to talk about it here. I can't believe this happened. And here are the images so you can see for yourself what I'm talking about. So he has a match. Forgive me, I don't actually remember who he fought, but he won the match by unanimous decision. So he got the win. But, man, this guy went super viral because his hair got knocked off of his head in the middle of a match. If you don't know what I'm talking about, there you go. Oh, my God. That happened. Are you actually kidding me? This man had a fade, and he caught the fade, and his fade flew off his head. That image, I can't believe I'm watching this. I mean, oh my God, look at that. Yo, are you serious? That is crazy. I don't even know what to say to that. I got one more for you that just shows kind of how the rest of this match went. But, oh my gosh, that's crazy. That man lost his hair in a boxing match. That actually happened. I saw, man, one of my favorite tweets from this was shout out to whoever posted on Twitter, like, yo, Jaylen Brown, your watch has ended. Your time is up. Your penance is up. We now have a new sports athlete to absolutely roast when we talk about poor hair decisions. Now, I talked about this on Maggie and Perloff show. Maggie couldn't believe me. I actually should have sent this to them. Matter of fact, I'm going to send this to them right after this show ends. Because I talked about how, the brothers are just, they're getting the hair pieces now. They're just gluing on the hair, and it's a whole thing now. You go to the barbershop, the right guy knows what they're doing, and it's easy. And she kind of didn't believe me, and I was like, no, it's a real thing. And then I showed her a bunch of TikTok videos. I did not expect that we would see that show up in a boxing match and that it would fly off his head. I have a lot of questions. Number one, how long has this been going on with this brother's hair? Has he been bald for this, his whole career? Was it just this one match? Because my thing is, has he been boxing with this hairpiece for that long? And this just happened to be, he took the right hit that knocked the hairpiece off? Did he get a different guy do his hairpiece, and that's why this one didn't go as well? And that's why, look at this. This is insane. This is insane. This is actually insane. How long has he been trying to fool people with this? And how bad was the hairpiece or the brother that put it on here that it allowed that to happen in a boxing match on national TV? I mean, the guy is... He's gonna be on beat for the rest of his life now. Jarrell Miller could be the next Mike Tyson, and we'll always go back to the fact that remember when his hairpiece flew off during a boxing match? I mean, that's unreal. That is crazy. Now he looks like a friar. He looks like he should be the mascot for Providence for the rest of the match. And credit to him for winning, by the way. I'll be honest. I think that I would have lost some. Focus. I would have lost some confidence. I would have been thinking about all these other things. To be in the boxing ring and compete, you have to be competing at a super high level of focus. And the fact that he was able to still go ahead and win this match, credit to Jarrell Miller. But this is Hall of Fame level nasty. Nasty. Hall of Fame level nasty work for Jarrell Miller. Now I'll say, I think I've seen it all. I don't think there's anything else that could happen in a sporting event that I've never seen before at this point in time. I thought I seen everything. I mean, we've seen family members getting boxing rings and upset about we've seen crazy stuff. A guy's hairpiece being knocked off his head in a boxing match, never thought I would have seen that in a million years. But this is where we are with men in hair trying to figure this whole thing out. Balding is a thing that is definitely something that hits the male ego in a different way for sure. Everyone deals with it. I deal with it. A lot of people don't know because I got a lot of hair around it, but I'm balding on the side of the top of my head as well. That is real, and people definitely think about it. Men think about it, and I don't. It's crazy. I want to say there's no shame in wanting to do it, but I mean that I think there is some shame in that. To go to that length, say, hey, I'm gonna put a whole hairpiece on the top of my head. That's a lot, but hey, man, listen. Women wear wigs. Women have extensions. Women have weaves. I think we should be more progressive. When we think about men's hair and what they want to do. But, oh my gosh, for that to happen, though, incredible. Whoever, I know one thing. Jarrell Miller, you need to tell people who your barber is. Because I'm usually not someone who likes to take money out of someone's pocket. But we didn't know who did that work so that other follically challenged men don't go to that same guy, have some other embarrassing thing happen to them in a moment in time where they're not expecting and their hairpiece falls off. Because you guys, it happened to you. It sucks that it happened to you. But you got to look out for your other fellow brothers. And you got to look out for other men who are also follically challenged so that they don't have happen to them what happened to you on national TV, which is you got your hairpiece knocked off in the middle of a boxing match. Thank goodness for him, he won. Like, I feel good for him. He can take that away from this because you would have lost this match and had his hairpiece come off. I mean, it would have been a disaster. Now he won, and he's a pretty good boxer. He may be able to parlay this into a hair deal. Maybe Rogaine hits him up and says, yo, man, what's up? Like, he may be able to parlay this, especially because he seems to be pretty good and he won this match. But, oh, my God. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Apologies to the podcast audience who can't see this, but I promise search Jarrell Miller hairpiece and you'll know what I'm talking about. Again, you might have already seen it, but I thought I had seen it all. And then a man got his hairpiece knocked off in the middle of a boxing match. That's going to do it, though, man. Fun show. Thanks for watching this edition of 40 Days and 40 Nights. Night 16 in the books. Again, like all shows, you can catch all the episodes, of course, where we stream live on YouTube, New Generation Media. We're also on X, EJ_Stewart. We're also on Instagram, ActionEJ. If you're on YouTube, be sure to like this video. That's very important to us. Be sure to be in the comment section during and after the video. And subscribe to the channel, New Generation Media. We greatly appreciate the support. Also, when it comes to X, follow me on X, EJ_Stewart. Follow me on Instagram, ActionEJ. And again, if you can't watch the shows, you can always catch all the episodes on our podcast channel, New Generation Podcast Network. That's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and TuneIn, or wherever you get your podcasts. All episodes of 40 Days and 40 Nights, plus all other podcasts from New Generation Media, are all there. New Generation Podcast Network is what you will search wherever you get your podcast. Woo! That was a fun one, man. I want to thank you guys for watching 40 Days and 40 Nights. It's Super Bowl week, which means we'll be revving up more NFL Super Bowl coverage as we get more details and more information. And this is probably going to be a big week, because it always is. Seahawks, Patriots. We'll have some guests. We'll have some fun as we always do. But this has been a thrill. Thank you guys for checking this out. I'm EJ Stewart. I'll be back with you a little bit later, which will actually be tomorrow. See ya.